Hello, my treasure hunting friends. Well, episode 2 here, hopefully will be a fun one. Something really cool that I discovered on this site I'm working on now. Well, one of the most interesting discoveries I made was actually by accident, but I think you'll understand how cool it is. But during this discussion, we'll cover a few points, paying attention to the colors that you come across as you dig, the importance of using your utak, or your brain, in deductive reasoning, thinking about what you see, machines versus manpower, which is the best approach, and then enjoying the really cool things as you discover these things. Looking for the signals of gold, and then paying attention, this is one of my favorite points, pay attention to the geometry of the signal, comparing, see if it's natural or not. Analyzing the soil types, again the colors, the composition, what's the makeup of the soils, and also one of my personal favorites, the hydraulic digging method. So again, as mentioned, it is exciting, it is fun, and my nickname for 15 years has been Indiana Jones, and except for his education and his Steven Spielberg budget, there's a lot of similarities. I really think it's fun. It is so interesting. And on this particular case, I actually got what the Filipinos call kinikilabutan, which I think is the close pronunciation to goosebumps. And quite often on this particular site, maybe a couple times a week, I would get that because when 2 plus 2 equals 4 so clearly and is so evidence-backed that it's just amazing. So this is one of those. So I'm walking along this path and using the ray finder, which is one of my personal favorite long-range locators. Very effective machine, very simple. And as I'm walking along this path, it's a few hundred feet long, the signal would be on for 3 feet and then off for like 15 feet, on for 3 feet and then off for 3 feet. So it was back and forth the whole time. So these beams, I counted them, there were 16. So what's the significance of 16 was my first thought. So of course a little Google research, and that's what I had initially thought was, how many beams are there in the Japanese flag? So I looked it up on Google, and sure enough, 16 beams or rays emanating from that global sun, the red dot on the Japanese flag. So here were their Shinto and Buddhist background and lots of superstitions and other things. It kind of felt like they were giving a salute to the flag, maybe a little nationalism involved, honoring Hirohito and the fatherland. And maybe they put rows of gold bars, possibly end to end. Each of these beams is approximately 50 feet long. They vary in length, so a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, average maybe 50 feet. So you're looking at maybe 100 gold bars in each beam. Of course, if they used ammo boxes with multiple bars, well, then multiplication is in due. But it was really cool because as I was walking along here, it was so consistently clear, and the signal is very strong for about 3 feet wide. So with most long-range locators, the signal comes up at a slight angle depending upon the mineralization of the soil and the moisture content, etc. So yeah, even if it's just 1 bar in a row, that's totally fine, right? So digging was in order. That's the next step. Well, I like to dig using the hydraulic digging method, kind of like for you Americans. You remember the monitors back in the 1800s, California Gold Rush, and they would use these giant like fire hoses and basically wash the soil down. Extremely effective. So I've cut many canyons. It washes the dirt right out to the lowest point. We'll move it hundreds of feet if you need it to, and I've even cut some big canyons into larger hills and mountains. It's like surgery. It's very minimally invasive to a mountain. So on the beams, it was a very effective way to get us down. So now here's where paying attention to the colorization or colors of soils and so forth. Now, as I started digging down, I'll put a little video clip in here. It was, very clear demarcations of layering. Now that can be a natural occurrence, of course, in sedimentary action and following Noah's flood, and that, all the soils came in at various levels, typically horizontally, but in like a keystone upshift or tectonic plate movement, sometimes those things will be angular or in different fragmentations of pitch. So here, the blue clay, which is just absolutely totally perfect. There's no imperfections or inclusions or any types of stones or any rocks of any size or any wood or organic material. Nothing. It's this perfectly, almost like epoxy or some type of resin type clay. Very hard stuff too. So that was a good indication that something's interesting below. Let me show you that little video that has a little more information there. Update on the digging progress. So today came across a charcoal layer here on this this side back in here. And another interesting anomaly is right over the beam. There's a lot of stones in the many stones mixed in with the medium layer. So you got the topsoil. Actually, the very topsoil is only about 6 or 8 inches thick. Then it goes into this medium layer, and then it goes into this next stone layer, followed by a super sticky and slippery yellow, gold yellow clay. Looks like almost paint tint has been mixed in with it. It's very interesting in its coloration. And then that's about 2 feet thick maybe. Then it goes back to the blue. So maybe 5 layers. But here we have stone over the beam, and then there's no stones when I get over here at the same level. So in that video you could see some of the composition of the soil, the topsoils, the overburden that we were digging through to get down to the objects, right? And there, that coloration of that blue is truly fascinating, because when you first chop into the blue, dig into the blue, it is extremely blue. And then a few minutes later, it's a lighter blue. Then it transitions overnight to gray, like battleship gray. Then in a day or two, it transitions to green, not a shade of green, but a true green. So for this clay, which could be a natural clay, but the pigmentation, I used to own an interior design firm and also did millions of square feet of artistic faux finishing. So I did a lot with coloration and tints in my life. And this stuff is not natural. And it's transitioned not by moisture content, not drying and it gets lighter. It's actually going through a transition of color. So from a strong blue to a strong gray to a strong green. And it's based on oxidation rather than on moisture content. So now this next video will show a little more on that. What I thought was uling or charcoal was actually a 12 by 1 plank that was laid all the way across this little access ramp that I'm digging. And for that piece of plank to be at that depth on an area that hasn't been previously dug by humans as far as farming goes, if it was just a piece of wood, it could have been deposited in some major upheaval during a volcanic activity or major flood, earthquakes, things of that nature, but not a 12 by 1 plank. So they would leave things that could be considered maybe natural, but the Japanese knew that if somebody was digging there, they may or may not recognize this as being odd. But if you're paying attention, again, using deductive reasoning, use your brain, common sense, and like, this doesn't belong here. And that's a quote, I quote myself very often, that doesn't belong here. So to all the workers, now they all say that this doesn't belong here because it simply doesn't fit into the surrounding topography or composition of soils. It's not natural. So look for those things. As we go down the ramp that we're building here, this is where the wood was laid across. And I took a shovel to try to get a cross section of it. And when we take the spinning locator, it goes crazy right over this area because this is where the beam from the surface was also found. Not the one we're digging, but the adjacent beam, because there's 16 of them, right? So this is the main beam that we are digging on this side of the hole. And here again, you can see the gray clay. I broke that open, and now it's blue again. So this next little video clip will give an example of paying attention to geometry. So as you're doing various types of scanning on the surface, then pay attention. Are there 90-degree turns? Are the shapes of the beam something like a snake or something totally natural looking? Or is this something that is definitely a man-made geometry? I want to give you an example of what I mean by beams. So this is the last beam in the series of 16 or more. And here it starts down at these two, I don't know if you can see it, two poles here. It continues a little bit further, but I didn't climb down on the edge of the creek. Maybe another 10 feet or so, and then it stops. But you can see that the east side and the west side are pretty straight. And it goes up there until you see that center pole that is the marker of the end of the signal right there. Put markers in on the hole that I'm digging, or the beam that I'm digging right at the moment. And again, very clear left and right geometry, east and west. And then it goes all the way up to the beginning of the hill and then stops. So where you see the three markers, that's the end of the signal. 90-degree turn to the left, 90-degree turn to the right. So the takeaway from those shapes is the fact that they are indeed straight, 100% straight. Also, they have a starting point and a stopping point. Very clear, black and white, yes, no. And there is a left side and a right side. And it's consistent, the signal is consistent. Yeah, so there the geometry tells you this is interesting. Now this last little video clip, it's just more of an interest thing rather than an important point as far as treasure hunting goes. But gold itself contains a tremendous amount of energy which is propagated, or it actually amplifies what the Schumann resonance 7.83 hertz of the core of the earth is emanating out through even the surface and out into the ionosphere. But gold takes that and then multiplies it. So that's why it's one of the easier objects to find in the ground using scanning equipment and locators. But this little video is just an interesting side point. Interesting side note, I set up my tent just in a spot that was kind of a little bit shaded and a little bit level. And so what I didn't realize until today is the next beam goes straight through the center of the tent. And every single night I am dreaming like a crazy man. I mean, I dream sometimes, but I dream every night and all night. So I'm all over the world in my dreams. Kind of strange on top of the beam. So again, just a side point, but definitely a powerful effect. So I hope this made some sense to you. It's kind of cool to find something that has the geometry of a Japanese flag. There are so many things on this site that are just truly amazing. So I'll try to make some videos regarding the Buddha, the canyon. It's a room, a vault. It's 23 feet by 13 feet wide. The Japanese tunnel, we call it the banana tunnel because the surface of the ground, that's what took us to that point, is the topography of the ground itself is about 2 feet deep and about 5 feet, 6 feet wide. So it's a tunnel collapse. And that's what started us digging in that end, and we did locate the tunnel. So pretty awesome. And then there's two rooms on either side of that. One of them's 100 feet long, the other is 30 feet long on the short side. So much to tell you. I'm sorry, I wanted to keep these videos like TikTok style, maybe 1 minute, but I don't think that's going to work. So anyway, hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.